This is WCBA.TV. What the mind can conceive, the heart believe, you can achieve. This is Colonel Poole speaking, and this is a WCBA production. I have a special guest today on this program named Matthew Gamble. Hello, Matthew.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm just doing great. It is a pleasure to have you on this program today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Now, how do we know each other?
Well, it's a long story.
Several ways.
Yeah. We first, I guess, I knew you through the media and through hearing about politics over the years. As I mentioned earlier, you'd almost have to live under a rock to not have heard about Colonel Oscar Poole. And then I became acquainted with you through Joe McCutcheon, our friend.
Joe McCutcheon.
And then I met Darvin,
our son,
at the barbecue restaurant.
At the barbecue
last year, and
you and Darvin attend the same church.
We go to the same church in Cartersville,
Tabernacle Baptist Church.
That's right.
He's in the choir. Are you?
He's in the choir. I'm not, but we see each other every Sunday.
Now, folks, that is Matthew Gamble you're listening to, and we're down here, and he is the nephew of former Governor Joe Frank Harris.
That's right.
Whom I'm going to meet in a few minutes, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You know, I shared this with Matthew about being at that Faith Church, at Faith United Methodist Church over in Cartersville with Mark Rutland some years ago. Mark had me come there and lead the singing, and you asked if I were a singer. Well, I did learn to sing at Sing Sing.
Uh-huh.
I was always behind a few bars, and I never could get the right key. So I'm a singer, all right. I'm a leader of singing. I can get folks to sing. We sang "Be Still My Soul," and we sang that thing through 2 or 3 times. I mean, all verses. We couldn't stop. The Holy Spirit, the presence of God was so real there. And I think your uncle, Joe Frank Harris, our former governor, was there, and his sister.
My mother. Uh-huh.
Your mother.
Right. Uh-huh.
I'm going to get to see her again. Sorry to have mercy. It's just dawning on me what connections we have here.
Absolutely.
Now, Matthew Gamble is well respected. And what is your title?
Well, I work with an association called the Georgia Association for Career and Technical Education. I'm the executive director for the association. And
what do you call that?
Well, we represent the teachers in Georgia that work in vocational programs, and they teach everything from agriculture education to marketing education, business ed, and these are the programs in high schools and middle schools that help a lot of our young people get acclimated with what they want to do when they graduate from high school and hopefully go into the workforce, because we're hopefully all going to go to work someday.
And I think you mentioned that you had 2,700 members?
We do. We have 2,700 members here in Georgia, and they're spread around the state in different high schools and middle schools.
Now, if the listener would like to look you up, what's the website? Go slow. It's
www.gacte.org.
One more time,
www.gacte.org.
All right. This is a great thrill. It hasn't dawned on me just yet, all these implications. You went to college over at
Lee University, which used to be Lee College in Cleveland, Tennessee, and I studied political science over there. And it was a wonderful experience there at Lee.
Now, our friend Joe McCutcheon, with whom involved in the McCutcheon-Poole Small Business Coalition, and you can get that on the website or in my books, my latest book. There's only one Oscar Poole. I didn't name that book. I'm not that.
I believe that.
Well, I didn't name that.
Uh-huh.
My wife did.
Uh-huh.
And Joe did. Frank Harris. Now, he was the father of Joe Frank Harris.
Right.
And Frank Harris was from Gilmer County, Georgia.
That's right.
My county.
That's right. That's right.
And you live down in?
Bartow County.
Bartow County, where Cartersville is. And you were telling me that I knew this, but I wasn't as involved with Joe then as I am now. Frank Harris came to Sue's restaurant in LJ and met with Joe on many occasions, and you.
He started bringing me up to meet Joe for lunch in probably the late 80s when I was a young boy, and I would ride up with him throughout the year at different times. He liked to go up to LJ and Gilmer County and return back to what he considered his true home, and we would always go get a good lunch at Sue's and visit with Joe, and that was how I got acquainted with Joe McCutcheon.
That makes me feel real good that Frank Harris, the father of all these folks, all these your clan, was from our county in Gilmer. Now I'm down here in Butts County.
That's right. We're in Butts County here in Flovilla.
Now we have another mutual friend, Tom Graves, our right now present congressman.
That's right.
And for those who might hear this before a week from next Tuesday, I hope you'll get out and vote for Tom, because he has already run twice. Mm-hmm. Third time. Should there be a runoff a fourth time, mm-hmm. and then in November it'd be a fifth time.
Right.
Well, I certainly hope that I was telling you about a picture I had. You saw the picture first?
I did.
And you told Joe about it.
I told Joe, and he called you and told you, but it was in the Atlanta Journal, I think, on the front page of the newspaper.
Well, that picture that night there at Big Canoe near Jasper, Georgia, the night of his election, we were all happy. Made the Associated Press and made the rounds, and somebody brought me a paper from Hawaii day before yesterday.
Oh, goodness.
I have not been a part of Indian Springs, and I'm sorry I have not been. Well, I've been here the last 3 years, and I was here 35 years ago when Mr. Bennett brought me over here from Thomaston, Georgia, where I was pastor. I was a part of the camp meeting movement in Florida, the old Swanee River Nazarene camp meeting, and my growing up days, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, I met God while they were preaching, pontificating, oratory, big and loud. I was back there in the sawdust, wiggling my toes, bare feet, in the sawdust,
wow.
The old-fashioned tabernacle, and I recall going out at night and hearing the choir. Now, I wish you had a choir here. What's wrong?
Well, we don't know. About 5 or 10 years ago, they quit letting the young people do the choir. They've got their separate service, and so. But I miss the choir. We used to have a real good choir, but we need to get another one going.
How about your mother? Let's get her to organize a choir.
Well, she could do it. She could do it.
Why not? I miss that.
I know it.
I was going to say I heard them sing "Sweeter as the years go by, sweeter as." You ever heard that song?
I have.
And y'all sing that down here.
We have.
You see the same menu that you grew up on, and I grew up on, are the same.
That's right.
Well, I am very thrilled to have you on the program today as my special guest, and we're just in the process of getting acquainted. And you mentioned about Darvin, our son Darvin. You met him at the
restaurant.
At the restaurant. Before you met him at church.
That's right. He had been in the choir for some time, but our church is a pretty large church, and I had not met Darvin yet. But when we were up there at the restaurant with some couples from our Sunday school class, that one couple's in the choir with Darvin, and they were talking and called us over and said, "We want you to meet Darvin Poole, who owns the restaurant." And we put all the connections together with you and all our friendship with Joe McCutcheon.
Well, you know, Darvin attends your church and has joined, him and Melanie, and he brought the choir director. I think even the pastor's been up there. He's got the whole church coming. And I appreciate all you folks from Tabernacle Baptist Church in Cartersville coming to our restaurant.
That's right.
Well, it's not well, it's his.
Yeah.
But I hold the mortgage. Or his mother and I do.
Yeah.
Well, as a young man, what's your age? What is your age, Matthew?
I'm 29.
29 years of age. You hear some noise in the background, but we're here in the cafeteria of the famous Indian Springs campgrounds down here at Jackson, Georgia. They won't pick it up too much because this is a directional mic. How do you feel about our country right now?
Well, I'm very concerned, and I have an 18-month-old little girl. My wife and I are expecting our second child that's due in January, and not only am I concerned for our country from our standpoint, but I'm concerned for our country for the next generation and generations to come.
Well, now, in that context, what are your concerns?
My concerns are the fact that we have continued to maintain this huge national debt. We're spending money that we don't have, and we're giving money away left and right to people that won't work for it and earn it on their own.
Do you think our government is now too big?
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that.
Well, now down at Sea Island, you met Joe down there.
I did. My wife and I were down at St. Simon's for a meeting about a month ago, and Joe happened to be at his home there on Sea Island, and I called him, and we were talking, and he said, "Come over and have lunch with me." So we went over and met Joe.
Now, as a young man, Matthew, are you a conservative?
Absolutely.
How'd you get that way?
Well,
that's all you ever knew, right?
That's all I ever knew. And going back to my grandfather, Frank Harris, and his story being that he came out of Gilmer County and worked very hard for anything that he ever had his entire life. And I saw his stewardship and his work ethic that my uncles and my mom inherited and passed on down to me over the years.
Somebody mentioned a preacher in your family, a Harris preacher. Who was that?
Well, I don't. We've got a lot of my cousins and family members that are involved in the church and involved in ministry, and have been very outspoken about their faith. But as far as anybody that's been an actual minister by vocation, I don't. There's not anybody that's specifically involved in ministry.
I'm afraid, Matthew, we're headed to a socialist state. I heard Michelle Bachmann say the federal government now controls 51% of the economy, and I also have heard that we're headed to about 60% now with this healthcare thing. How do you feel about the healthcare thing?
Well, I think that if this healthcare proposal it's been approved in Washington. Once it goes through and is implemented, I think that private insurers are going to go out of business.
Do you think America, our country, the United States, the my country 'tis of thee thing, could fall?
I do. I'm very concerned. A lot of the young people that I talk to that don't share my beliefs, their view of our country and our government and what our priorities should be, I don't know what we're going to have to do, but I'm very concerned about it.
How do you feel about your generation?
Well, I think we all need to spend a lot of time in prayer because I think a lot of the generation even that I'm from, and I'm just 29. I think that a lot of them have become complacent, and they're not involved necessarily in their church and don't have any interest in faith. And we just need a revival in America.
You know, I believe there is a revival beginning.
Yeah.
We have a lot of young people, not enough, of course, who are rising up to the occasion. Now, I'm speaking now politically, being conservatives. Unless we change the direction, our liberal direction. And now your uncle, Joe Frank Harris, was a Democrat.
He was. He was a Democrat back when there wasn't a strong Republican presence in Georgia. Most people were Democrats, or if you ran for office, you had to run as a Democrat. But he's always been a conservative.
Now, wasn't his wife from Thomaston, Georgia?
She was, and it was her father that was the Methodist minister. He was Reverend Dixie Carlock.
That's right.
And he was a Methodist minister.
That's who I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah. Now that's her father, and of course she married my uncle Joe Frank.
Well, now I was pastor also in Thomaston.
Okay.
At the Hightower Church, a Methodist church, and many of my friends, former years, were her friends and grew up with her.
Right. I think Little Roy Lewis, the famous bluegrass picker. He's from that area too, and was talking to him.
Now, what can we do, Matthew, as we face the issues of our day, that big issues that are going to destroy us unless we check them? What can we do?
Well, I really think that it's profoundly simple, even though a lot of people I talk to sit back and throw their hands up and say there's nothing that can be done. But we just need to get back to the basics and the priorities and look at the responsibilities that government has, the responsibilities that they've taken on that they don't need to have, and look at ways to try and reduce spending and get this country back in control and back on the right track, because as it is right now, we're headed in a direction that is not good.
And we have less than 120 days to do it. Well, we've got the election of 2012 coming up, but we have got to have a new Congress. Don't you believe?
Yeah, I do. I think that, just last week when Robert Byrd died, and he was one of the longest serving senator.
Can you believe I was a student with him in class?
Really?
At Morris Harvey College. Now, he was 12 years my senior. I was 20, he was 32. And he just was buried. I taped a program on Robert C. Byrd because he was a friend of our family. Can you believe he was once a Gideon?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
He handed out Bibles. Of course, he had some other things in his history we won't talk about. He was the king of pork.
Yeah.
As you know, I've carried pork back to Washington for 13 years.
Right.
Well, folks, you have been listening to Matthew Gamble here. And, Matthew, I appreciate you. Now, remember, I've got you recorded here at age 29. And as you rise, I'm going to watch you, as others are, as you rise to your ascendancy.
Well,
Joe says you could be a governor or a senator, and you come from that stock.
Well, you're kind, Colonel Poole, and I appreciate you and all the stand that you've taken over the years, and I've told Joe McCutcheon this too. In all the years that I've known of you and heard about you, you've always remained true to your core, and you've never abandoned that principle.
Well, thank you very much, Matthew Gamble. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to WCBA.TV. What the mind can conceive, you, Matthew, believe in your heart, you can achieve. This is Colonel Oscar Poole speaking. You have been listening to a WCBA.TV production.